When his lips touched mine, it unleashed a torrent of conflicting emotions. As soon as I kissed him back, everything fell apart. I knew it was wrong. How does a life, seemingly perfect on the surface, begin to crack like old furniture, the seams invisibly giving way until the decay is undeniable? What was supposed to be a simple family trip, a happy lunch to honor my son Daniel's 18th birthday, became the moment everything fractured. This is Hidden Love Stories, where true, often unsettling, narratives of the heart unfold. If you connect with stories that explore the raw complexities of human relationships, we invite you to subscribe and like this video. It truly helps our channel bring more such accounts to you. Today's story is an exceptionally difficult one, delving into themes of profound marital neglect, emotional vulnerability, and the crossing of society's most sacred and forbidden boundaries. Please be mindful as you listen. Like always, my husband, Robert, was a ghost in his own home, already lost to his work while I did the dishes and baked pies, dreaming of a day filled with laughter that rarely came. Our neighbors saw a great family, a beautiful house, well-behaved kids, always spotless and smiling. Only I knew the insidious rot that had crept into our safe, comfortable world. Robert, always driven, was a shadow disappearing into the chaos of his office life, leaving me in a deepening well of loneliness. That day at the beach, the hot sun on my skin only amplified the emptiness. Daniel and I were having fun, tossing a ball, sharing funny memories. I looked away for a split second, and then I felt the soft touch of his hand as he helped put sunscreen on my back. It seemed so simple, so caring at the time, but as the hours passed, that touch began to fester in my mind, growing complicated. My thoughts were a tangle of broken dreams, and a stark realization hit me. Daniel was the only person who truly saw me anymore. His careless but kind words, his easy presence, warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in years, a warmth Robert had extinguished long ago. It wasn't until that precise moment that I understood Daniel was filling the gaping void my husband had carved out of my life. I couldn't stop wondering what this dawning awareness could mean for us. The carefully planned family party quickly turned into a sad, hollow event. As we sat on the sand, the laughter of other beachgoers faded, and I felt myself drifting away internally, as if a wave had snuffed out all joy. The heavy silence between us forced me to confront a hard truth. The fire I'd been desperately seeking within my marriage was long dead. Robert came home that evening tired, distant, uninterested. No hello, no questions about my day, no particular care shown for his son. His absence was a crushing weight as I sat at the kitchen table. It wasn't a soft absence anymore. It was an overwhelming void. I had become an ordinary, easily ignorable part of his life. Standing there, my mind replayed old, dirty memories, anger at myself for letting things slide into this desolate state. I couldn't even remember the woman I used to be, the one proud of her family. I felt like a shadow desperate to be seen, to matter, to feel important. That night, watching Daniel absorb every word I said, I realized he was the only one who could still make my heart beat faster. His bright young eyes held a reflection of the hope and trust I'd long since lost. Then, in a split second, everything shifted. His gentle touch on my back sent a shock through me. When his eyes met mine, they were filled with a sensitivity I'd never encountered from any man, let alone my son. I didn't know what to say. In that instant, all the pent-up feelings, the loneliness, the despair, the unwillingness to keep up the charade, surged to the surface. It was like a silent storm had broken, revealing truths I'd hidden for so long. It felt like a betrayal of myself, like I'd been struck by my own hand. Back on the shore, surrounded by people, I realized I'd built my own prison and now desperately needed the strength to escape. My emotions were unraveling, tearing me apart. Even though it wasn't love, the connection growing between us felt unbearable, a dangerous precipice. As I looked at Daniel, his expression shifted from amusement to confusion, and I knew we were both teetering on the verge of something monumental, something terrifying. I was about to make a discovery that would leave no questions, only an undeniable, unyielding truth. How could I love someone who was never truly mine to love in that way? Our loneliness and hope were linked, yet they existed on different, forbidden shores. The wall between us felt like it could crumble at any moment, even as I was swamped with fear and doubt. And with each passing second, I realized it wasn't love I was feeling, not in the conventional sense. It was a sad, constant awareness of time passing, filled with losses I couldn't shake. I was on a long, empty beach, torn. Robert represented the dark parts of my past, while Daniel, impossibly, seemed like my light. But neither truly belonged to me in the way I was beginning to crave. How could I move on? Summer days, once symbols of calm, now felt like they were telling me something else, something unsettling. The sea called from the window, the sun shone, but the thought of Robert's constant absence cast a pall, stripping away any joy. His work always came first, and each instance of neglect felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I pushed the thought away and left with Daniel, the only person still willing to share these fleeting moments with me. On the way to the beach, I couldn't help but notice how grown up he was becoming. He sat in the passenger seat, lost in his headphones, gazing out the window. A chilling thought struck me like a wave. If I blinked, he might be gone for good, off to college, to his own life. The feeling was both scary and strangely freeing. These thoughts brought back memories of his small hand in mine when he was younger, his laughter filling the room. When we finally arrived at the beach, it felt like we both exhaled a breath we'd been holding. Daniel helped me carry the bags to a quiet spot by the water, his presence a small comfort. I spread the towels on the warm sand while he set up the umbrella with a focused competence that briefly reminded me of him as a child. As I watched him change, I longed to talk to him, to understand what was happening inside him, inside us. But I said nothing, just lay down and let the sun envelop me like an old, familiar blanket. I thought about the suntan oil. When I asked for his help, I saw Daniel hesitate as if he wanted to escape the situation. My chest tightened when he finally agreed. His touch, when it came, caught me off guard. His hands were no longer those of a child. They were soft, careful. I had no idea why this simple moment hit me so hard, making my body tremble in a way it hadn't before. Daniel slowly applied the oil, his hands moving as if he were contemplating each stroke. He touched me with a steady rhythm, and I closed my eyes, feeling something I hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. The sensation made me think of the first time I held him as a baby, so helpless. That memory was a stark contrast to the feeling coursing through me now, as his touch became surer, moving lower. It felt like a storm had materialized from nowhere, catching me completely off guard. I tried to say something, to tell him to stop, but no words came. Though I was trying to cool down in the silence, I told myself it was just a kind act. Still, reality around me seemed to warp with every second. He kept his hands close to the edge of the towel for a moment, and I could tell he was unsure what to do next. I could have stopped him at any point, but instead, I whispered that everything was okay. Those words hung in the air like an irrevocable judgment. More silence settled between us. I felt like I was sinking deeper into myself, his touch the only anchor. As his fingers moved lower, I could no longer fight him, or perhaps myself. My inner objections dissolved, leaving me in a dizzying vortex of emotions I couldn't even name. It was too much. I felt both lonely and intensely excited. Though I didn't understand what was happening, my joy, perverse as it was, grew. Maybe it was because I had been clinging to a desperate longing for so long. On that beach, my life broken and empty, Daniel had become a rare light I could no longer ignore. A rush of feeling was building inside me, undeniable. He wasn't just someone I cared about. In a world that had grown dark, he was the only thing that could make me feel alive. When our eyes met, I saw every spark in his was a reflection of my own. It felt as if fate had presented this chance, one I couldn't pass up. By letting go of the past and the future, I surrendered to the warmth of the moment. Not knowing what else to say, I whispered, "You can go on." Those words seemed to speak themselves, born from the fire of that instant. He went on. With each deliberate movement of his hands, I felt more than just physical sensation. I closed my eyes, letting his touch create a magical haze around me, a world I didn't want to leave. It felt like he was getting to the very core of who I was, a sense of wonder and raw truthfulness. It was clear to both of us this was no normal moment. It was a new way to connect, a resonating chord of unnameable feelings. At that very moment, I realized his hands were doing more than just touching me. They were currents of an indefinable feeling, mixing happiness, lightness, and a terrifying madness. I could feel a strong desire tearing me apart from the inside, my lips pressed tightly together. That desire became clear when my thoughts stopped, only the sound of our synchronized breathing breaking the silence. I opened my eyes and looked up at him. For a split second, everything else seemed unimportant. We were alone on this endless beach, away from everything. The rules, the world, they didn't matter here. It was just a moment, but it felt like it held a whole universe of possibilities. Every second was filled with those rare emotions often hidden by the mundane routine of daily life. I wanted to stop time so the wall between us wouldn't shift, so our souls and hearts would remain one. This beach picnic was our secret haven. Even the quiet had meaning. We didn't need to say anything. My worries and fears receded for a while, replaced by a fragile link that held us together. We navigated an endless sea of emotions, like two ships seeking shelter from a storm. It showed that feelings can sometimes transcend what words can describe. As we shared this quiet, close reality, we stopped being just mother and son. Instead, we were like flowers trying to reach the light, not realizing it could one day become too bright, too scorching. What happens when the lines blur so much they disappear entirely? If this story is pulling you in, make sure to subscribe to Hidden Love Stories and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss how these true, unsettling tales unfold. I didn't notice how quickly time was passing as the sun went down, casting long shadows over the beach. Taking deep breaths of the fresh sea air, I fell into a peaceful silence. It felt like a repair, a break from the dull, worn-out life that had taken its place. But now it was time to go back home. And with that came a familiar dread that crept up on me like a persistent chill. As Daniel and I got into the car, I felt a sense of inevitability settle over me. As we drove, I got lost in my thoughts, trying to separate myself from the unbearable pain that seemed to be eating away at my soul. Each turn of the wheels made the fragile peace I had built around myself shrink, as if something scary was waiting for us at home. Once there, I was back in my small world, surrounded by the apathy Robert had created with his constant absence. He talked out loud while working, as if no one else was in the house, stuck in his own little world. I could hear his steps in the kitchen as he made dinner, but it was clear he was thinking about something else. Every time he looked away from me, it made it harder to hold back the anger building inside. "Robert, are you hungry again?" I asked, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. His smile was fake and brief, a small nod, and he kept looking through the cabinets for something to occupy his evening. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. His eyes, his hands, his full attention, all of it blurred the lines of what used to feel normal. I tried to banish those thoughts, but they kept returning relentlessly. I knew I had to stop, to force myself into silence, but a darker part of me didn't want to. It missed the connection and care I used to get from Robert. As the days went by, Daniel became quiet. His unspoken attitude said more than words ever could. As I cooked or sat in the living room, his eyes became sharp, never leaving my side. One night as I watched TV, I couldn't take his eyes off me. I didn't reject it. Instead, I let it happen, which led to a silent bond between us, something neither of us could articulate but both deeply felt. There was a lot of heat in the house on the weekend. Robert left again, leaving Daniel and me alone. I don't know where the desire to go back to the beach, our beach, came from, but it was strong. Maybe I was trying to escape the stuffy house, or maybe I hoped the fresh air would clear my mind. It was clear we were tense during the drive. Daniel sat there with his headphones on, looking out the window. I felt something tighten inside me, forcing me to confront what was happening between us. It was peaceful and calm in the morning. As I worked on breakfast in the kitchen, the smell of freshly made coffee and warm toast mingled. I couldn't help but smile as I thought about how many times Robert had quickly looked at me before rushing out the door. The regular beat of our lives was evident in how our mornings had become clockwork. Today, though, he walked up to me and kissed my face. For a brief moment, I felt his presence like the soft warmth of early spring sunlight. But before long, he was leaving, returning to his dull, work-centered world. I heard his steps on the stairs, and then the door slam, leaving me alone in the sunny, quiet house. Like always, Daniel walked into the kitchen almost inaudibly, a ghost in the early morning light. It was fascinating how still he was as he stood by the window, looking outside. I looked at him and saw his eyes were fixed on me, just as they were on the beach when he seemed oblivious to anything else. It was clear to both of us that this relationship had grown into more than just a mother-son tie. It was very hot, and I could feel his breath behind me, a gentle reminder of how love and warmth could swallow everything. I was stunned by the intensity of the moment and tried to stop him with a quiet word, but before I could say anything else, he moved closer, and I felt both scared and excited. "I need to leave," I started, but he stopped me. When his lips touched mine, it unleashed a torrent of conflicting emotions. As soon as I kissed him back, everything fell apart. I knew it was wrong. I was so caught up in my feelings of love and anxiety that I forgot about right or wrong. I knew it could destroy everything. Yet, after each kiss, I felt alive again, something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. In those brief moments, I broke all the rules and stepped into the unknown. The day dragged on, but I felt like I was in a storm. Daniel and I had crossed a line that was never meant to be crossed. I knew then that this wasn't a mistake that would simply fade away, but a heavy load that would only get heavier over time. I knew I was on the edge of my own world, unable to escape the shame pressing down on me. I couldn't escape his look or his small signs of love, which made me feel both longing and desire. Even so, it still felt like we were precariously close to falling into a chasm. That's when I realized something very important had changed about me. We were part of something that was against the rules, but it felt profoundly important. When his hands touched me, the sensation broke down the barriers holding me back, letting out feelings I had been denying for so long. I wondered if I had done something wrong, because I knew deep down I had. This journey into forbidden territory has only just begun. What happens when such a line is crossed so definitively? Subscribe to Hidden Love Stories and enable notifications so you don't miss the continuation of these true unsettling tales. Your likes and comments help our community grow. Thank you for listening.